I breastfed Fennec for what was going to be the last time for weeks. And I recognized at that point, like, okay, yeah, it's probably a blood clot, but it was still hard. It was still really hard to recognize this thing that I've fought so hard for. It may be taken out of my hands to a certain extent by circumstance. Then they came in and told me the results of the ultrasound. They said, you have clotting from your low calf clear up into your abdomen, and we are not equipped to deal with it.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Anne Beringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I am Jaye Anne Beringer, and we are here with Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Guys, she's back. Say hi, ladies.
Hello.
Hi. Kayelee, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. It's been a little while. Been a hot minute.
Been a lot of while, yeah. Although I think people heard your voice a couple weeks ago. That was the beginning of August that we recorded that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot has happened since then. And I know that a lot of people are nosy about what happened. And you are so gracious as to tell us all about it. So I'm really excited for this. And I think everyone else is going to be really excited as well. But first of all, we have to do a get to know you question, right?
Let's do it.
I don't know if we've ever actually said all the words in a row, but let's go back through. How many kids does everybody have?
Shall I start?
Why don't you start, Kayelee?
Okay. Well, I have 7 kids now.
You have 7 kids?
Yes, I have 7.
Julie, how many kids do you have?
I have 3 and 1 on the way.
3 and 1 on the way. And I have 3 that I birthed myself and a bonus daughter. So among the 3 of us, we have 15 kids.
Well, in my head, my brain was like, we just have 1 million. We have 1 million kids altogether.
Just 1 million.
Don't do the math, just 1 million.
Like, if we all got into the same space with all our kids and our husbands, we'd have to rent part of a hotel. Total crazy.
It would be such a party.
Such a party. I think that, and I haven't actually met Lige, but I think that the husbands would get along way better than I think anyone ever could have imagined or planned. Yeah, it would just be very interesting.
That's for sure. They all think they're funny. That's the common denominator. All of them think that they are the funniest. So we'll see what happens. Who's truly the funniest when we get them together? Especially in an episode format.
We have been talking about doing that episode format for so long. And yeah, one day we're actually going to do it. We're going to have all the husbands in an episode and they will talk and we will just probably listen because there's no getting a word in edgewise there. So I chose that because this topic today is related to children and family and all of that. So I wanted to make sure everybody had a little bit of context around that before we dive in. Kayelee, where do you want to start? How do you want to do this?
Oh, man. I don't know. Start at the beginning. So I was a little reluctant when the idea popped into my head of like, oh, it might be really nice to share my experiences of the past couple of months on the podcast. And I was like, no way. But then I realized that so much of my experiences really relate to the feminine and learning to be in the feminine and also what it looks like in real life because it's messy. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to be in the feminine and it's fantastic. Like even people who have like a lot of background or a lot of skills or a lot of tools, like they're going to have their moments of it just being a mess because that's real life and that's even a part of the feminine. So I guess maybe it makes sense to start at the beginning and just share what I've experienced and then talk about some of the lessons of the feminine that came into play. How does that sound?
I like that. I want to highlight for people just to keep in mind there are going to be some really interesting themes coming through here that you personally or somebody you know may have experienced. Themes of medical self advocacy and having conversations about that, and all the fears that come with going to a hospital as a mother, especially a new mother. So you may be triggered. And I think the reasons why, other than exciting voyeurism, the reasons why we're doing this is because it's super relatable and it's very relatable to women specifically when it comes to the medical profession. We're not saying anything bad about the medical, so I want to just preface that too. It's just experiential. Sometimes it seems terrifying just to be in the hospital. So I want to highlight that. Yeah. So tell us about the birth as much as you want to share about your birth
Okay.
and go from there.
All right. So to talk about my son's birth, I think I need to back up about a week. Because the week leading up to his birth was very interesting. It was kind of like I got cocooned in my house and Julie was there. And it was almost like this, okay, Kayelee, you're about to give birth. Now let's wrap up so many loose ends. Let's have you feel all these different fears and insecurities. Let's see if you're really going to lean into surrender and trust that there's good in the unknown. Because I kept thinking I was going to have this baby and then it wasn't happening. And I was in limbo of like, my gosh, can labor start yet? Or thinking labor was starting. There was a period of time where like I thought I was in labor and then I wasn't, which was fun. But just having a lot of stuff come up around my female ancestors and some judgments that I had made and some reckonings of like, okay, can you see them as real people? Can you see yourself as a real person while you're coming up to this point of, hey, you're going to give birth and the veil's going to be thin. You're going to be closer to life and death simultaneously than you are at probably most other points of your life, Kayelee. So, how are you going to handle these things? How are you going to relax into the unknown? Or are you just going to try to keep controlling things? Because I wanted to control things. I wanted my baby to be born not on a certain day. I wanted my baby to be born in a certain way. And I could feel myself wanting to control all the variables. And having Julie around, having my supportive husband around, it made it easier to be reminded, like, okay, relax. You don't have to control everything. And trying to control things is going to bring you pain. So I went into the labor experience having had a whole week of processing a bunch of emotions, processing a bunch of fears, coming to terms with a lot of female relationships in my life. And this theme of control and surrender had just come up over and over and over again. Then I started to have contractions and then my water broke. And then it was like 2 hours and then the baby was here. For anyone who doesn't know, my husband and I, we prefer to give birth at home. And the plan was I was going to have a water birth. And it was really interesting during labor because I use hypnosis techniques to help me handle the whole experience, to help me relax enough to let my body do what it needs to do and what it's fully capable of doing without my mind getting in the way. And I was like, wow, this is getting harder. It's harder to get into that relaxation. It's harder to it's just harder. I started to panic a little bit because normally I'm way further in labor when I start needing help from my husband, Lige, who he is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, not actively practicing right now, but he knows his stuff. So I call upon him for support when I'm struggling to maintain that hypnotic state and that trust in my own body and that surrender. I was having to rely on him sooner than I normally would. And so I was like, man, what's going on? Am I doing something wrong? What the heck? And I didn't know it at the time. Julie recognized it, but I was in transition at that point.
Like 2 hours in, transition.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was completely unexpected.
Not even 2 hours in, though. She's in transition like an hour and a half in, an hour and 15 minutes in, or something like that. And I did want to point out, just from my perspective of this experience, it was beautiful because there had been so much work you had done. You had done so much spiritual work the week before, and I loved that right before, like the day of this birth. Well, I guess it's technically the day before, you decided to watch all these funny videos and make you laugh. and like laughed you into labor. So there was this beautiful lightening of the tension. And then it was like, okay, everything's ready to go or ready to go. And then like burst, literally like water burst. So it was beautiful.
Thank you for adding that, Julie. Yeah, it was very interesting because I was doubting myself and then I was reminding myself that, no, I've got this. And then I just had this really strong feeling like, okay, if we don't start filling the birth pool now, I'm not going to give birth in the pool. And I was like, I really want to give birth in the birth pool. I don't want to land birth because I feel so comforted by the water. So I told Lige, start filling the pool. And he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I'm sure. I don't know why, but it needs to happen now. So he was filling the pool. And by the time the pool was about ready, I actually felt the urge to push. And I was like, wait a minute. This is too early for this. What is going on? Then it just hit me. You have to get in the pool ASAP. So I got in the pool. I don't think I was even in the pool for 5 minutes. Actual pushing was less than 2 minutes and my baby boy was in my arms. I was kind of in shock a little bit because I was like, already? That fast? I was fully prepared for this to last longer. What is going on? It was really interesting to have that juxtaposition of doubting myself and then having confidence in myself, and then doubting myself and then having confidence in myself. Even when my husband was like, are you sure? Having to trust in my own body wisdom and my own intuition, even when my main support partner, because Lige backs me up all the time, he trusts my intuition, when even he was like, wait a minute, this isn't normal. And Julie's kind of in the mix of things, knowing what's going on, but not verbalizing it, which was totally fine because I needed that experience. Go ahead, Julie.
I just didn't want to freak you out. That was really the thing because that can be a lot of pressure. But when I saw you shaking and I asked you, are you cold? And you said, no, I'm hot. I immediately knew there's the adrenaline. We're ready to go. This baby's coming. And I kept looking at Lige, like I kept elbowing him, like she's gonna have a baby. We're about to have a baby. And he didn't get it. And clearly, he literally looked at me as the head's coming out. He's like, "Is the head coming out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this baby is coming right now." Yeah. Yeah, there's a head. I barely had time to get the camera on. Anyway, yeah, I just didn't want to freak you out, but it was very beautiful to watch you take the reins, and I wanted you to take the reins because it's your birth.
Yeah. Well, and it was really interesting because Lige is usually very keyed into me, especially during labor. He's just very attuned to my needs, very attuned to what's going on. Normally, he would have known, he would have picked up intuitively because that's how he works that, hey, we're almost there. So I think it was almost by design for him to not be keyed in so much, to still be there for me, to still be an amazing partner in that. And for you to not verbalize what you knew and for me to just have this opportunity to like trust myself, regardless of what's going on with the people around me. So yeah, it feels very by design, even though in the moment I was like, what the heck? Come on. So it was beautiful. And in a lot of ways, it was like this preparation for what was coming next. I mean, we had a few normal days of, hey, you have a new baby. So maybe you're not sleeping very well. And breastfeeding is always a challenge for me in the very beginning. I think it has a lot to do with my yod that has Ceres as the apex, that breastfeeding is always like, I have to be so determined and it's so difficult, which is interesting because that in its own way was a little bit of a preparation for what was coming as well. But my baby was born on a Thursday. And then the following Friday, so a week and a day after his birth, I started having some issues with my leg. And at first, I thought, this feels like sciatica. That's all it is. No big deal. I went to sleep that night just mildly annoyed because it wasn't painful enough to be concerning. It was more just an annoyance at that point. Then over the course of the next couple of days, my leg started hurting so much that I couldn't stand up straight. It felt like the muscles were locking up. There was just so much pain. And I was like, okay, something's really wrong with my sciatic nerve, or maybe my SI joint is out. I had all these explanations in my head for what was going on, even though there was a part of me that was trying to deny that I was in so much pain because I didn't want it to be real. Like when I'm under stress, sometimes I'm like that. It's very Piscean where it's like, I'm just going to pretend that reality is not reality and maybe it will go away, which was totally what I was doing. But it was so incredibly painful. Laying down hurt, sitting hurt, everything hurt. And stretching, I tried these sciatic stretches and they didn't help. So I was like, what the heck is going on with my body? Like, I don't know. I don't really want to go into the doctor right now for so many different reasons, but like maybe I'm going to have to. And we ended up seeing our chiropractor that Tuesday. So pain started Friday, went through the weekend in excruciating pain. Tuesday, went to my chiropractor because it's got to be something with my SI joint. So he worked on me and I felt better. Not 100% better, but by the time I left his office, I could stand up straight while walking and the pain had lessened. And I was like, okay, it's probably just going to take some time and some more adjustments. So Lige went with me to the chiropractor and we took Fennec, we took our baby, and all the rest of our kids were hanging out with my in-laws at the time. So Lige and I went home and we were just relaxing in our living room. It was a few hours later and Lige actually told me, go ahead and take a nap. So I was trying to. And then I felt this very strange, burning, weird pain on the inside of my thigh. And everything else had been on the outside of my thigh prior to that and down my calf. So I was like, this feels really weird. And then it felt like this icy sensation. So I told Lige about it because I was a little bit concerned. He was sitting with me and all of a sudden he's looking at my feet because I was sitting in a recliner, my feet were up and he was across from me and he was like, Kayelee, there's something wrong with your left foot. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, it's not the same color as your right foot and it's looks swollen. Piscean denial again. I was like, well, my left leg is always a little bit bigger than my right leg, which it actually has been my whole life. There was definitely a part of me that was like, I can't have another thing go wrong because my birth was so beautiful. But then after that, it was just thing after thing after thing, like struggling with breastfeeding. And my son had a tongue tie that needed to be revised and not being able to do that for a whole week because people were out of town. So many weird setbacks with breastfeeding. And I, at one point, was having panic attacks because I wasn't taking as good of care of my nutrition as I needed to be, and my brain flipped out. So it was just like, oh my gosh, it's been thing after thing after thing. It's been really difficult for the past week. I just cannot handle one more thing. Then one more thing happened. My leg started swelling. It started turning red and then purple. And my husband had texted our chiropractor and was like, okay, what the heck is going on? This seems very odd. And the chiropractor was like, that is possibly a blood clot. You need to get her to the emergency room. So it was about 20 minutes from the time that my leg started swelling to when we left our house. At that point, I could not walk. The swelling happened so fast. I couldn't walk. So Lige had to support me getting out of our house. It was incredibly painful. We went to our local hospital that's not even a 5-minute drive from my house. Went to the ER. We had Fennec with us in the emergency room. And it was really interesting in the ER because it was like they had a theory on what was going on, but they weren't going to tell me until they had solidified the theory with a little bit of evidence. And so they went and did an ultrasound of my entire leg. And they actually ended up in my abdomen as well. So I was like, that's a little bit odd. And while we waited for the results, they put me on a heavy duty painkiller and a blood thinner. They immediately put me on a blood thinner. But before they started giving me heavy pain meds, I breastfed Fennec for what was going to be the last time for weeks. I recognized at that point, like, okay, yeah, it's probably a blood clot. I may not be able to breastfeed Fennec for a while. And I'd fought so hard to be able to get to that point. Like he'd had his revision, his tie revision, his tongue tie revision, and things were going better. And then suddenly I had to come to terms with the fact that I may not be able to breastfeed this baby and gave myself a little bit of space to grieve that as I was feeding him, but also gave myself some space to hope, like maybe it won't be that big of a deal. I'll be able to breastfeed him. It won't be a problem. And maybe even if it is a big deal, like, I mean, it's not the absolute end of the world, but it was still hard. It was still really hard to recognize this thing that I've fought so hard for. It may be taken out of my hands to a certain extent by circumstance. Then they came in and told me the results of the ultrasound. They said, you have clotting from your low calf clear up into your abdomen, and we are not equipped to deal with it. So we're going to call the other hospitals in bigger cities nearby and see if they feel equipped to deal with it. And so they called the other hospitals and they were like, nope, we do not feel equipped to deal with this because the medication that we would probably have to give her can cause excessive bleeding when bleeding already exists. And I had postpartum bleeding. So they're like, she needs to go somewhere that has an OB team that can handle, at worst, an emergency hysterectomy. And I was like, what? Emergency hysterectomy? Like, that is not something that I want to experience. They did say that's a worst case scenario, but that's a scenario that your team, whoever's taking care of you, needs to be prepared for. It was really interesting. About that point, there was this peace that set in, this sense of like, okay, whatever happens, it is going to be okay. I'm going to be taken care of. My kids are going to be taken care of. And it was really interesting because some family members and friends came to the ER to visit me before I got life flighted to Utah. And it was funny because they seemed more stressed out than I was at that point. It felt kind of odd because it's like, it feels like on an energetic level, I'm having to like comfort other people at this point because they're more worried about me than I am about myself. And it was a really bizarre experience. But when it hit, like, oh, I'm actually going to have to get life flighted out of here. Fennec can't come with me. Lige can't come with me. I'm going to have to leave Fennec here and all my other kids. And then the question came, does Lige come with me or does he stay with our kids? He asked me, what do you want me to do? I will do whatever you need. And I immediately was like, I do not want to go by myself. I do not want to go by myself to the unknown right now. And so we made arrangements. My mom was in town. My mom lives in Australia, but she came. She wasn't originally going to be here in the States around the time of Fennec's birth. It was a happy set of circumstances that changed her plans early on in the year. It didn't feel happy for her at the time. It was actually a really challenging experience, but happy in hindsight that she got to be here. And so she took my kids, including my week-and-a-half-old baby. She and my grandma, my aunts, and even two of my uncles, they were the primary caretakers of my children while my husband and I were gone for a week. Because my mother-in-law was sick. She actually had COVID at the time. She was super, super sick, and she normally helps with my kids whenever stuff is going on because she lives close by. So it was really interesting to surrender the well-being of my children to my family of origin. There was a lot of complicated emotion with that because my relationship with my family of origin is honestly a little bit complex. I love them. They're amazing. There's a lot of baggage in my family of origin. And so having to make that decision and also realizing that I felt peace with that decision was a really beautiful experience because it was kind of this confirmation of like, not only are you being taken care of, but your kids are being taken care of and they will be okay. Even though normally you would not be down with this experience. You would not be like, here, take all of my children, including my newborn baby. So there was a lot of surrender, but at the same time, I didn't have a lot of choice. And so it was an interesting experience of like, am I going to be a victim to the fact that I don't have a lot of choice? Or am I going to surrender to the flow of life and trust that we'll be taken care of? Because those are two very different things. They don't look that different on the outside, but from the inside, as a person experiencing that, those are two very different experiences.
Hey friends, it's Jaye Anne here. If you have been feeling really stressed out about the world lately, you are not alone. There's been enough crazy and fear flying around the internet that even I've been knocked off my rocker sometimes. But it's times like these that I'm really grateful for the tools I have to regulate my nervous system. I developed these tools for myself when I was going through the thick of it. My babies were young and I had a ton of repressed anger. And these tools help me through other stressful times, including negotiating my own divorce, having difficult money conversations, and of course, the whole COVID experience. And I've put all these tools in a method I call the Authentic Self-Care Method. This is different than other self-care programs because it is a framework for you to find your special sauce when it comes to self-care. And let me tell you a secret. Step 1 is not take a bath, get a haircut, or go to the gym. Step 1 is regulate your nervous system. And that's exactly what we do inside the 3-in-1 membership. This powerful program includes focused journals and meditations you can do in just a few minutes, like the fight or flight session, the hippocampus session, which rewrites your ability to see new possibilities, and the vagus nerve session, which helps you regulate your whole body in a crisis. Using these tools, members have reported feeling more empowered, more expansive, and many experience relief from actual physical pain, all for less than $2 a day. So join the 3-in-1 membership now so you can learn these tools today. The world is not going to become less crazy. The only thing you can control is how you respond to it. The 3-in-1 membership will help you do that, so click the link in the show notes to enroll today.
So I got to ride in a helicopter for the first time in my life, and it was strapped to what felt like an ironing board. It was very uncomfortable, but the nurses that were on the helicopter with me did such a great job of um, like holding a safe emotional space for me and trying to keep me as comfortable as possible in this incredibly uncomfortable situation. And that was the beginning of my experiences with feeling kind of powerless because I literally couldn't do anything for myself. So they strapped me onto this board. Then I got wheeled out to the helicopter and was carried by these two nurses, the helicopter pilot, and my husband. So just this feeling of powerlessness at one point, I tilted because there were two women who were quite petite on one side and two big men on the other side. Nobody thought that through. So when they picked me up, there was this tilting. And it was like, okay, I am literally in their hands. My well-being is literally in the hands of these four people. One of them I know and trust with my life. The others, I don't know at all. And it was really bizarre to be in that situation, and simultaneously, like, my mind was like, you should be afraid, but I wasn't. There was this peace as well as this, like, well, I can't do anything about it. So it was really, really interesting. And the helicopter ride was kind of cool. It was at night. I got to see the moon look absolutely gorgeous from up in the sky. We got to the hospital, and that was the beginning of a whole series of experiences where I couldn't control anything. And if I tried to control things, it just made me feel worse. So, like I've already said, I ended up spending a week at the hospital. I didn't just experience having blood clots throughout my entire leg and into my abdomen. I experienced that twice. I ended up having a procedure, a thrombectomy. So they went in through the backs of my knees while I was under sedation. So I could actually feel some of it. I had to tell them, hey, I feel this pain in my low back. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're not supposed to feel that. Like, we've got equipment in your low back right now, but that went through the backs of my knees. And at one point, I felt this burning behind my left breast. And I was like, is that normal? And they're like, oh, that is us placing the filter that's supposed to keep blood clots from going to your lungs. So I guess they didn't pay attention when I was like, hey, I'm a redhead and I feel things even with anesthesia unless you give me enough. Yeah, it was interesting. Everybody at the hospital was incredibly kind, but there were moments where I was like, hey, I know my body. I know my body. You don't know my body. Please listen to me because I know my body. You know all kinds of things that I don't know, but I know my body. And so they went in, they cleared out the clots. It was super successful. They showed me a picture of the clots that they had taken out. And I was like, wow, that's an awful lot of stuff that you just took out of my body. Holy cow. And then I went into recovery. The next day, I was like, I'm in so much pain. Something doesn't feel right. I kept being told over and over again, that's normal. It's probably fluids redistributing in your body. You can't clot on a blood thinner. Like over and over again, you can't clot on a blood thinner. You can't clot on a blood thinner. As I'm like, something is not right. And Lige too, he's like, you're in a lot of pain. What is going on? They wanted to discharge me the next day, but the doctor that I spoke with, she was like, okay, let's do an ultrasound just for peace of mind. They did an ultrasound and I had clotting everywhere that I had had clotting previously. It was like the thrombectomy had never happened.
What was your first thought when they told you that? Because they had already said you can't clot on a blood thinner. This isn't a problem. It's all done. It's over. You've done everything. And then lo and behold, it was like it never happened. What was your first thought in that moment?
It was, are you serious? This is not real. This cannot be happening. And then this feeling of betrayal, because it's like, wait a minute, you told me over and over and over again that this was not possible. And I even started doubting myself. You told me so often because I felt like something was wrong. And so there was a sense of self-betrayal as well, where it was like, I had it right and I didn't trust myself. I had it right. I knew something was wrong. but I chalked it up to anxiety and I chalked it up to whatever. So I I went through this period of time for a couple of days where I was like, who can I trust? I can't trust the doctors. I can't trust the nurses. I can't even trust myself. Who am I going to trust? And that was hard to kind of experience that like lack of faith in me and in other people. Uh, Lige did an amazing job holding space for me while I grieved that. I had to grieve a lot of things. I was grieving leaving Fennec. I was grieving not having the postpartum experience that I wanted because this was supposed to be my most positive postpartum experience ever. And then I had all these things happen. And so back to having clotting throughout my whole leg and into my abdomen again, they wanted to do another procedure. They were going to go in and clear it out again because they thought that I must have a narrowing of a vein that goes through your hip and that was causing things to clot and that maybe they'd put a stent or something in there. So the first procedure and the second procedure, there were two different doctors, one doctor for the first procedure and a different doctor for the second procedure. They both told me one option is to put essentially a soaker hose in your leg with thrombolytics, which are clot busting drugs. But we're not going to because it's too dangerous. You're postpartum, you're bleeding, and those drugs can cause you to bleed uncontrollably. It's not worth the risk. We're not going to do that. So I go into the second procedure. I've already told the doctor, I'm really worried about this because I felt stuff the last time. So they actually got an anesthesiologist to come and they didn't like put me out completely, but I didn't feel anything that time. So I was like, yay, I advocated for myself and they listened to me. The first doctor even told the second doctor, she felt a lot, get an anesthesiologist. Don't mess around. When she says she feels stuff, she means it. And so I was pretty out of it. I was mostly awake the entire time for the first procedure, and I was kind of out of it for the second procedure to the point that like I had no sense of what was going on. They didn't go in through my knees, the backs of my knees this time. They went in through my neck. And I didn't find this out until after I woke up, quote unquote, woke up, but they opened up that vein in my hip and it didn't change anything. So they were like, oh, it's got to be an inflow problem. It's a problem at the capillary level. Then they put in the soaker hose with the thrombolytics because they didn't know what else to do. So I wake up and I'm told what happened and that they did the thing they told me was too dangerous to do. And that was, I had to process a lot of emotion around that because it felt like another betrayal in a sense. It's like, wait, I was told by two doctors that this was not an option. And I went under thinking one thing was going to happen. And I came out of it. And the thing that was too dangerous to do was done. What the heck? What? And so because I had those thrombolytics and had tubes in my neck to deliver the thrombolytics, I was taken to the ICU so they could watch for bleeding because they have less patients per nurse in the ICU. And I was put on bed rest. I could not move. I could not get out of bed. I mean, I could move my arms, but I was hooked up. I had so many wires attached to my body and multiple tubes. I had two different IVs as well as the tubes in my neck. Like I couldn't even feed myself. So Lige had to feed me and kind of this surrender of like, okay, somebody else has got to feed me. Even like using the bathroom, I was like, I can't get up and use the bathroom. And they had these external catheters. They're actually really cool. They don't have to put anything inside of you. It's like this sponge that sucks things up and sucks it away. But if they don't turn it on, it doesn't work. And the person who set it up for me forgot to turn it on and didn't position it correctly. So I literally wet the bed in the ICU. And that was the point of like, oh my gosh, I feel like almost like I'm a baby. I have no control. It's kind of demoralizing that I just wet the bed when that shouldn't have happened. And it wasn't my fault, but I have to deal with it. I thought I was going to feel incredibly embarrassed when I told the nurses, but I didn't feel embarrassed for the most part. It was just in the back of my mind. It was more the sense of I need to be taken care of, and there is no shame in needing to be taken care of. That was a theme a lot of times in the hospital. Even once I was out of the ICU and just on the cardiac floor, I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't walk without a walker. I couldn't shower. Other people had to help me do all those things. I could feed myself. That was a win that I could feed myself again. But all these other things I couldn't do for myself. And I just had to surrender to the fact that I needed to be taken care of and that there was no shame in that. There was no shame in needing that kind of help. That was what they were there for. That was what Lige was there for. I knew I loved that man before all of this, but I love him even more now for his just willingness to be there for me in every way that looked, no matter how unexpected the way he had to show up looked. Just like the recovery in the hospital, it was kind of interesting because I went from, okay, I can't do anything. I'm on these thrombolytics. I could potentially hemorrhage at any moment to, hey, we've got to do another procedure. We've got to take all of this out. And I'm like, what do you mean you've got to take all of this out? What's going on? And they said they consulted with a thrombosis specialist, and the thrombosis specialist said, quit messing with her body. You are making her clot. You are making it so that she's clotting even when she has blood thinners. And they were like, what do you mean?
Hold on. That needs to be said over again, because this is a medical doctor saying, trust the body. And the body is trying to make you stop doing all this extra work. So stop doing all this extra work. So say that again, because I think someone needs to hear this.
He said, stop doing what you're doing. Let her body do it. Let her body deal with it. And he explained that it wasn't quite a full-on thrombotic storm, because a true thrombotic storm is when you have clots showing up all over in your body. My clots were thankfully just in one limb and in my abdomen. But the fact that I clotted on blood thinners, it was kind of like a mini thrombotic storm. And he said that he'd seen it before in postpartum women where like the body is wise. In a postpartum woman, the whole goal is to prevent hemorrhage. Like the womb is trying to keep you from bleeding too much. And it's not isolated, because that's not how our bodies work. There is a higher chance of clotting when you're postpartum. So my body was trying to do what it needed to do. But there were a lot of factors, like my baby was 11 pounds when he was born. So there was that compression on that vein in my hip. I was active as much as I could be, but not as much as I probably needed to be, because I was just so tired and so worn out at the end of my pregnancy. And then I have some like hereditary predisposition towards blood clotting, like structural predisposition rather than like chemical predisposition. So it was just like this perfect storm of like, okay, and now there will be blood clots. And this doctor explains, like, you're creating trauma in her body. And right now her body thinks trauma equals we need to clot blood so she doesn't die. So quit causing trauma in her body. Take the soaker hose of thrombolytics out. Take the filter out, because we don't want her to start clotting closer to her lungs. Get all of it out, send her home on blood thinners, and her body will clear up the clots. And I'll see her in a month to make sure that it's going well. So I go through all of this at the hospital. I'm there for a week just to hear your body's going to have to figure it out.
How did that make you feel?
There was a part of me that was really angry. Like, why did I have to go through all of that? Why did I have to go through all of that? I had a friend who he's kind of an herbalist, and he had a friend who was postpartum and had blood clots around the same time as me, and they caught it early, and he's like, cayenne tincture. Just give her a bunch of cayenne tincture. And she had no problems. The cayenne tincture like helped break everything up. She didn't have to go to the hospital. And I heard about that and I was like, why couldn't that be me? Why did I have to go through all of this? Like, I honestly was like a little bit of a petulant like teenager or toddler there for a little bit, where it was like, why me? Why did I have to go through this exquisitely difficult experience? Like, why did I have to be poked and prodded? Why did I have to have a nurse go looking for a vein because I was so dehydrated? I couldn't eat or drink before each procedure for extended periods of time. So I was super dehydrated, and she needed to get a new IV in so that they could do the third procedure to take all of the stuff out that was causing problems. And she hit my nerve. And that was almost this final straw for me of like, I'm tired of being poked and prodded. I'm tired of being in pain that's supposed to be for my good, but it doesn't feel like for my good right now. And the only reason I'm putting up with this is so that they can get all this crap out of me. The only reason I'm letting this woman fish around in my arm looking for a vein is because I need to be done. I need to be done. And I know she's just doing her job and she's doing her best. And she was so kind to me and so apologetic. But I was like, I'm tired of feeling like I'm this experiment. I'm ready to be done. Though there was a part of me that was a little bit afraid to go home, because it's like, what's going to happen now? I'm going home on a blood thinner and my body's supposed to just figure it out. Like, I just had this experience where I clotted on blood thinners. What's going to happen? And I still couldn't walk by myself by the time I left the hospital. I still had to use a walker. I couldn't walk for very far. Like, going from my hospital bed to the bathroom in my room was not a far distance, and that was exhausting. It was a matter of a few feet, and it was utterly exhausting. And I was going home to my kids, to my brand new baby. It was kind of scary. And I got more sleep at the hospital than I had been getting at home because I wasn't getting woken up by a newborn. I was occasionally getting woken up by people needing to take labs. But yeah, it was weird to get more sleep in the hospital than at home because normally that is not the case for me at all. So we got sent home and I went through a lot of different experiences where I alternated between despair because of the unknown. I was still in pain. My leg was still really swollen and I didn't know what was happening. And trusting my body and being grateful for what it was capable of. And while I was at the hospital, I tried to pump to maintain my milk supply, but it was almost impossible. And the dehydration and stress and everything, by the time I got home, I could pump for 15 minutes on each side and I'd get half an ounce of milk total. I was really sad about that because I had worked so hard to be able to breastfeed. Then I started this process of trying to get my milk supply back up. And I was like, why is this taking so long? What's wrong with me? And Julie's like, Kayelee, with what you went through, you could have easily lost your milk supply entirely and not been able to breastfeed at all. You're doing fantastic. And Lige having to remind me of that and me having to surrender to the fact that the timeline for getting my milk supply back didn't match what I wanted it to. My healing timeline has not matched what I wanted it to. It was really hard when we got home because I couldn't do anything to help Lige. He had our kids that he was taking care of, our home that he was taking care of. Thankfully, he was off work. Otherwise, that would have been a wild, wild ride. And I just could sit in the chair and hold Fennec, and that was about all I could do. For the first few days, I couldn't even walk far enough to get to our bathroom, so we had a commode in our living room, which was a really weird experience, using the bathroom in my living room. It was just bizarre. Just feeling like I'm not contributing much of anything to my family right now, and my kids need me, and I can hardly even hug them. Just having to be reminded over and over again and reminding myself over and over again, like my value is not tied to what I'm capable of doing right now. It's okay that my family can't have my support right now. It's okay that they have to support me. And while all of this was happening, donations were coming in because Julie is amazing and she let people know what we were going through. Like, Lige and I were so humbled by the people sending us money, praying for us, offering frozen breast milk to give to Fennec, offering to help clean our house, offering to pay for me to get homeopathics, like all these different people. Some of them I hardly knew. Some of them I don't know at all. And some of them I know really well. All of these different people were coming together to support my family and to support me. There was this refrain in my head that kept popping in of like, I matter and I'm worth taking care of. And like, I knew that cognitively before this experience, but I don't know that it was sunk into my heart and into my bones as something that I truly believed. To feel so utterly supported by so many people and to have to grapple with the fact that there were moments where I felt undeserving of that. Moments where I was just like, well, of course people are going to take care of me. Of course people are going to take care of my family. It was quite the experience. I have a scar on my neck from having all the tubing and stuff in there when they were doing the thrombolytics. When I first saw that scar in the mirror, I was like, ugh. Just one more mark of me having gone through something terrible that I didn't want to go through. And then I caught myself and was like, no, wait a minute. This scar is here. It's going to be here. And yeah, maybe I can do things to make its appearance less. But the fact is that my body went through what it went through. And I went through what I went through. Is this scar going to be this constant reminder of like hard things and terrible things? Or do I want it to be a reminder of something else? And so I started, every time I touched that scar, every time I saw that scar, to say to myself, I matter and I'm worth taking care of. Because that's what I want to remember when I see the scar. Did I want the scar to remind me of the times I felt powerless? Or did I want it to remind me of the times that I felt held and loved and supported? one thing that happened over and over again, especially once I was home, I would struggle a lot. I would get really sad. Then there would be something reminding me of tools that I have, somatic tools and breathing tools, ways of thinking. And Lige was especially good at reminding me, like, hey, are you going to like actually connect with your body? Like, are you going to actually connect with your body and be there for it? Doing that and engaging in like extreme gratitude was very healing, but also very difficult. I resisted it very often, like resisted the extreme gratitude. I resisted taking care of myself some of the time because there was a part of me that still was like, why did I have to go through this? But I remember one night I was like, okay, I am tired of being angry. I'm tired of being sad. The fact of the matter is that this has happened. My body went through this. My body suffered. It wasn't just me. So I went through this exercise of witnessing the parts of my body that were impacted by my experience in the hospital and by everything afterwards and before. I talked to my veins. I expressed gratitude to them. I witnessed, I was like, I know you went through this hard thing. Just all these different parts and pieces of my body. And I was able to like do a lot of healing, sending a lot of love to my body and to myself. It was really interesting while recovering at home. And even now being on a blood thinner, there are so many things that it's like, don't take that supplement. Oh, don't take that medication. Oh, don't eat that food. Don't do this because it will interfere with your blood thinner and you might bleed too much. It's crazy. And there were different supplements that I wanted to try, and there were different herbs that would be supportive, but I felt so afraid because how do I discern what to do and what not to do? The School of Evolutionary Herbalism, I have wanted to do one of their programs for years now. And every time I've gotten one of their emails saying that the course was open, I've had this like thought pop into my head, you're going to need to know this. Over and over again, you're going to need to know this. It was never the right time, or we didn't have enough extra money for that, or I didn't have the time to put into it, and I put it off. And then all of a sudden, one day I was researching some herbs and researching how my particular blood thinner that I'm on at the moment works. And it hit me like, oh, this might be why I needed to know that. So I felt kind of upset with myself for not paying attention to my intuition, not paying attention to divine guidance. And it was because I had gotten an email from the School of Evolutionary Herbalism saying the program was open. And I was like, I can't do this right now. It's more money than we can spare right now. I'm at home recovering from giving birth and from severe blood clots. I can't do this. But there was this message of like, okay, Kayelee, are you going to lean into feminine energy? And are you going to allow your husband to witness your feeling? Like, are you going to tell him how you feel? So I did. I told Lige how I was feeling. And then I felt better and I let it go. And I was like, eventually I will do this herbalist program. Eventually, like, yeah, it's going to have to wait again. And then I got an email saying, well, we have this longer payment plan. And I told Lige about it, fully expecting, like, we can't really afford this right now. And I actually forgot about it the rest of that day. And then later that night, right before midnight, I was sleeping in the living room and Lige came in and woke me up and he's like, what email do you want to use? It's like, what do you mean? What email do you want to use for your course? Time's almost up. We've got to pay for it. And I need to know what email to use. And I was like, oh my gosh, the masculine is really showing up for me right now and giving me what I need because I felt what I felt and I shared what I felt and then I let go. So I've been watching the videos for this herbalism class and it's been absolutely mind-blowing and it's been confirming so many different things that I already had been thinking. It's helped me to love my body even more, to appreciate what my body has done for me, appreciate the fact that I was pumping and getting half an ounce and now I'm fully breastfeeding my baby, like no supplementation, and just realizing my body is absolutely amazing. And guess what? The symptoms that I experience, they were my body trying to talk to me, not my body trying to hurt me or my body failing me. And in so many ways, it has felt like everything that I've experienced has been part of my path, has been part, like I've needed to go through it to get clarity on moving forward in life. Even though it sucks sometimes, it feels so much like my body has my back. My body is telling me what it needs. The universe has my back. God has my back. My husband has my back. My friends have my back. My community has my back. People I don't even know have my back because I've seen it. And I don't know that I would have believed it so thoroughly if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through now. And just so many things having to do with the body and the spirit. It's like I learned about them and I understood them. I believed that I was valuable and I believed that my body was my friend. But more than ever, I don't just believe it. I don't just think it. I am it. I am worth it. More than ever before, I believe those things and they're a part of me.
Hey friends, it's Julie. I'm just popping in here real quick to tell you about a very special invitation we have for you. If you have been feeling deeply called to learn more about your feminine identity or to see what feminine power really is, or you're just loving the podcast, then Kayelee and I would love to invite you to join our community, Feminine Alchemist. Inside, we host live monthly women's circles, challenges, and Wheel of the Year celebrations. They are seriously so much fun. We have monthly workshops where we bring in experts to teach on anything from menstruation to mythology. You'll also get access to our library of courses about astrology, intuition techniques, sacred embodiment, and cyclical living. And most importantly, you'll be able to connect with women who are like-hearted and walking the same path as you. So if this sounds exciting to you, join today by clicking the link in the show notes or going to femininealchemist.com. That's alchemist spelled M-Y-S-T. Okay, back to the episode.
Such a powerful story. Everything you pulled from it is so important, I think. Can you kind of recap some of those lessons that you learned from this whole experience, sort of like in bullet point format? Because I think it's really, really powerful information that you pulled from each experience. I just wanna see the main highlights now because this is key. Everybody listening, not everybody listening, but a lot of people listening have probably been through some kind of a medical crazy time. And it doesn't matter why you're in the hospital, there's always this question of, why am I here? What are we doing? What is the goal? Why are we doing this? It's often a big struggle to even gain any kind of context for what they're trying to achieve or what they think it is. And then what is the action and how do I make an informed decision? Then after all of that, you go home and you're like, what the heck just happened? So can you
Yeah.
just pull out some like important things that you pulled out for your own experience? And then I have another question for you when you're
Yeah,
done with that.
absolutely. So it's like I relearned and learned on a much deeper level that my body is wise and it's working for me. The symptoms and things that it experiences are communication. They're not my body failing me or punishing me in some way. I learned that I can trust my intuition and that sometimes it's going to be a little hard to distinguish what is my intuition. And that's okay. I don't need to be ashamed of that. There were a lot of messages around shame. Like, I'm really struggling with my body right now. I'm a somatic practitioner. I talk about the body all the time. I help people be more in their bodies all the time. And I'm struggling with my body so much. And I don't have to be ashamed of that. It's okay. It's okay that I'm struggling. And it's okay for me to apply the tools when I'm ready. One thing that I didn't mention before was that I dissociated a lot from my body in the hospital and when I got home. And at one point, Lige was like, hey, will you try being in your body in a very, very loving way? And I was like, I am in my body. He's like, no, you're not, honey. It's understandable that your body would be a scary place for you right now, but why don't you go just be in your body? And realizing that it's okay to dissociate. Dissociation is actually a wise thing sometimes. It's a gift. It's when it goes on too long or gets applied in the wrong ways that it can become problematic. But like, there were times in the hospital I needed to dissociate from my body to not totally fragment and lose it. I just want to stress that there is no shame in that. There is wisdom in that. And there is also wisdom in coming back to your body in your own time. You don't have to be ashamed if, today I don't feel capable of being in my body. And maybe tomorrow I will feel capable. I learned that the masculine energy really truly does want to show up and support feminine energy. I already knew that, but I really lived that in a very visceral, very full body way, that the masculine just wants to please the feminine and the feminine just wants to inspire the masculine.
Beautiful. I also heard themes of surrender and releasing control all throughout,
Yeah.
whether it was the birth and the hospital experience. Letting yourself be taken care of. I really appreciated you going into great detail of how you felt like a baby, because to me that's like, not only did you give birth and you were then rebirthed and then had to go through the whole coming out of, like, can't walk, I can't change myself, and all of that powerlessness that comes with being a baby. Like, this is incredible wisdom. Not that your life was like, yeah, you should be really happy that that happened, but it is a great microcosm of the idea of rebirth. Tell me about your theory about how your births give you insight to your life, because I don't think that you mentioned this.
No, I didn't bring that up. So what Jan's referencing for everybody listening is something that I've expressed to her and Julie privately before. Every time I've given birth and around the time that I've given birth, the themes that show up have been themes of the period of time between that birth and the next. It's like, okay, here's the pattern. Here's like a little glimpse of what lessons you're going to be learning, really, really learning for the next however long. And that's held very true with each of my children thus far. So at one point, a few weeks ago, it dawned on me like, oh, this has been a really wild birth experience. I don't think I want that to be coloring potentially the rest of my life, because I don't plan on having any more children. It would actually be kind of risky for me to have more children, because my blood clot was pregnancy induced, pregnancy related, and the chances of me having another blood clot are really high. But I was like, I don't want this to color the rest of my life. Then it hit me like, wait a minute, no, like I'm actually okay with this being the pattern of the rest of my life, because yeah, okay, some really hard things happened and I experienced growth that I probably couldn't have experienced another way. There have been so many beautiful things, including feeling loved and supported, including truly loving myself more deeply. And it's like, okay, if that's the pattern for the rest of my life, let's do it. Um, it's kind of funny. Timing was a big thing leading up to Fennec's birth and during his birth, where it was like, am I ever going to have this baby? I want to have this baby now. I want to have this baby now, too. Holy crap, how is this baby here already? It happened so fast and it was intense, and now he's here and it's wonderful. And realizing like, actually, I'm healing faster than they expected me to, even though it's way slower than I want to be. I was able to build my milk supply back up way faster than was expected, except by me. I wanted it to be like in 2 days. Okay, not really. But after a couple of weeks, I was like, why isn't my milk supply all the way up? Just there already is kind of this pattern of like, I really want things to happen on my timeline. And when I surrender to the fact that that's just not going to happen, it actually goes faster and is much more of a triumph than I ever imagined could be possible. And like that was Fennec's birth. That's been this experience healing. That was getting my milk supply back. And who knows what else it will be moving forward.
So good. What is kind of a general process? So for someone who has been in the hospital for a long period of time, or for a surprise period of time, these kinds of things, what would be a good process that if you were working with them or if they were asking you for wisdom, that you would give them to integrate that hospital experience now that everything is safe and said and done?
Yeah. So, what comes immediately to mind is allow yourself to grieve. Let yourself feel whatever it is that you feel, even if you think you shouldn't feel it, even if you think you should already be over it, even if you're worried that somebody else will think you're crazy for bursting into tears or for being angry or for being relatively calm. Like, whatever grieving looks like for you, for however long it needs to happen, hold space for that, because you're not going to be able to truly integrate the experience until you grieved what needs to be grieved. And kind of the opposite, the other side of the coin of grief is gratitude in a lot of ways. So allow yourself to grieve and also invite yourself to deep, genuine gratitude, looking for the things that actually really are good and not from a spiritual bypassing place. Like you have to honor the pain first. You have to grieve, scream, cry, sob, stare blankly at a wall for however long you need to, as often as you need to process whatever, and allow yourself to find the beauty, allow yourself to express gratitude, even if it's as simple as, wow, my body kept me alive. I'm still here. Thank you, body, that I'm still here. Like that grief and gratitude piece is going to be the foundation on which any integration is going to happen. At least that's been my experience.
I love this. You've seen this. You've seen Kayelee do that. I can't wait to hear what Julie has to say. You've seen the push pull in real time. Julie's like cracking up. I love it. You've seen this push pull in real time, like, and that roller coaster is part of the integration. And thank you for showing that in such clear, deep, feeling, visceral, confident fashion. Thank you. I'm going to stop now. Julie.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that watching Kayelee do this in real time has been really beautiful. Being able to be so close to the experience, even though I was far away, and sometimes for me, feeling really helpless. And I mean, I was there for the birth, and literally the birth happened, and I had to leave 24 hours later. And so, like, not being able to be there, as a friend was hard, but to watch you even from afar was really beautiful to see your transition and to work through it and see you working through it. Um, I told Jan this, and I think I've told you this as well, but I felt kind of like our other friend Forrest felt like Kayelee needs this right now. She needs this. And I don't know why, and that sounds like a terrible thing to say when your friend is in pain, like, it's a terrible thing, and it's not like I wished any kind of pain, but I could see that there was something that you needed, that, like, this is what your body needed. This is what your soul needed, was this experience, and I think that is very beautiful, and I think when we see our lives that way, instead of seeing it like everything is just happening to me and it's always the worst and it's so terrible, if I see like, okay, why does my soul need this experience? I can come out in these beautiful ways that you have come out with. And sometimes that's really difficult, but it's so cool to hear how it's happening. And then the one last thing I wanted to say to echo everything Kayelee said about allowing yourself to feel things is I just relearned this about patients who scream feel better faster, right? Like there was just another neurological study about patients who allow themselves to express pain heal twice as fast as patients who don't. And so I echo everything Kayelee said about let yourself feel it because that is the fastest way to heal. And you've been a really beautiful example of that.
Thank you.
The other thing that I thought was really interesting before we finish up here is I think that a lot of times people perceive home birthers or people who are into natural childbirth or people who are into breastfeeding as super anti medicine. And what you got to demonstrate here was yes, I trust my body to birth this baby. Also, I'm going to take action when action is needed and go to the hospital. And I'm going to trust the people around me to be like, you went to the chiropractor. Chiropractor's like, hospital. You're like, cool, hospital. And that I think flies in the face of a lot of this belief that people who are into this natural healing that there's this perception of like, no, we never would go to the hospital. You never should do this. You never should see a doctor. I know that there is a lot of fear, and that's why people tend to be drawn to more natural resources when it comes to health and healing. And there's a lot to be said for that. It's both and you also demonstrated so beautifully, like, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
And I would say a lot that the perception of a lot of holistic people is I will never do the thing, but I would say most people are willing to do both. As a medical malpractice attorney, it is fascinating how many times the answer that you got is the answer. Trust the body or your body will work it out. Like so many times and I'm guessing many of us have either taken our kid to the ER or gone to the ER and at the end of the day they're like, "Well, just fluids, give them fluids and send them home and this is as much as we can do." So, I think that balance is very fascinating and necessary, and we need both of those. And ultimately, you are the ultimate arbiter of your body and the choices that you make, and just how fascinating that your body ended up being your savior. in so many ways right here. I think that's really beautiful.
Yes, that's so good. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, and self-advocacy is crazy important. Just asking the questions. What the heck is this? What are we doing? What am I agreeing to? How far does that agreement go? Because we need to know where the boundaries are. And if they're crossing a boundary, they need to know it. All of those things are really important. And what is my personal autonomy look like? Like when you walk into a hospital, there's a lot of assumption that we own your body now and we can do whatever we want, but that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
So just being highly self-advocate and just informing yourself as much as possible and having people with you. Like this is my big soapbox. Make sure you have people with you who can understand what's going on and can advocate for you, because guess what? You're trying to recover. So if you're trying to recover and you're feeling yucky and your brain isn't working all the way right because you've got that fuzzy math thing going on, maybe you have a fever, maybe you have fear, all the things are happening to you. You need somebody who's going to be that shining beacon, taking on the mental load of what is the doctor saying and taking notes, because there's a lot of stuff that I've had to take notes on. All those things. So that like self-advocacy is like a really big deal to me, and autonomy, informed consent, and all of that. So anyone who's going through it or maybe has an issue in the future, it's okay to ask questions. Like totally good.
Amen, Jan. Amen. And if you have to call an attorney, you can call an attorney. Trust me, it's okay. And on lots of times they won't charge you because it'll just be a consulting thing. I know that like sounds really scary. We get really scared to ask questions and we get really scared to bump up against the system. But Kayelee did a great job asking questions. Lige did a great
Yes.
job asking questions, and just having one other person with you. And, I can't promise I can get to every single email, but you can message me. Not that I know everything about it, but I can point you to great people sometimes. But just have some kind of advocate. That's my number one, just like Jan said.
Yeah. Kayelee, what's one thing that you want everybody to know about after having had this experience?
The thing that I hope for everybody listening is that on some level, listening to this podcast or through some other avenue, that you are able to make greater peace with your body, because your body is your friend, not your enemy. Even when it seems like your body's betraying you or your body is hurting you in some way, your body is just trying to communicate to you so that you can heal. That's ultimately the body's goal. It's when we don't understand the language of the body that we start thinking the body is out to get us or is a problem. So practice listening, practice recognizing the language of your body.
So good. Thank you, Kayelee. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably and your wisdom and everything. Thank you, Julie, because Julie has, I'm sure we can do a whole episode on just self-advocacy and in the medical field. So thank you for sharing your wisdom as well. And thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.